Beautiful morning sun here, but it's gone cold again. It was mild and rainy for a few days, and it seemed like spring was being fertilized and flourishing. Now, dry, clear sky, birds singing, sun shining, and an invigorating chill. February, huh? So, the thing that I've been thinking about is belief and what we believe about the things we do, and also how we can talk about it. There's this phrase that I often come across, and it seems like it's an apology, and that an apology for believing what we do, or seeing what we do, or thinking what we do. And that's unverified personal gnosis, or UPG. And people throw around this phrase to say, oh, but that's just UPG, or that's not a real thing, or that needs confirmation, or whatever. And it strikes me that, if you're talking about gnosis, there isn't really any other kind than gnosis that is unverified. Because if it was verified, it wouldn't be gnosis. How are you going to verify it? Like by empirical methods? Are you going to measure it, weigh it? Are you going to, what some people do is, they experience something and then they find something that corresponds to that in some ancient authentic text, and they go, oh look, my gnosis has been verified because someone else had it before me. But there was always a first time, and things aren't eternal either, things aren't eternal and unchanging and fixed and frozen just because somebody 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 3,000 years ago experienced the gods in such and such a way. Doesn't mean that that's exactly how we will. And people who try to only work with things that are authenticated and verified by ancient approved texts, I don't think they have it right, because here's the thing. If you're a reconstructionist, like if you try to reconstruct exactly the beliefs and the practices of ancient people, no matter how precisely you get the details right, and gods know there's no way of getting them all right, and for many traditions, like my sort of Celtic tradition, a lot of times they're from oral traditions, so we don't even have undiluted sources, or we don't even have many sources at all. So how can you reconstruct something that you don't have all the pieces for? You can't. And it strikes me that that type of practice would be totally alien to the people who originally, see, I'm doing it too, to the people who once carried these as living faiths. Because living faiths are living. They move, they change, they fluctuate, they adapt to circumstances, they adopt features of others in syncretism. And, no matter how exactly you were to reproduce it, it still wouldn't be right, because you're not them and our world is different. And even if you were to deny yourself all of our modern technologies and only use, write your scriptures on vellum with ink made of black walnut and gall and soot. Even if you were to do all of that and perfectly made goose feathers as quills that were hardened in hot sand and then carved with a knife, even if you were to do all that, our world is not the same, and you're not the same, and you can't be. And so to reconstruct something and to only accept gnosis that is verified by sources seems to me to be to deny yourself what actual gnosis is, which is that deep knowing that comes to us outside of empirical sources and outside of historical sources, because it's outside of history, it's outside of time, regular time, it's mythic time. And when you feel yourself cross into mythic time and you have an experience where you see something or you hear something or words come to you, can we not just say that yes, that is something? It's something to you, and it has changed your reality. Your reality is the only one that you can reliably know anyway. And if your reality has changed, then the world has changed because your thread in the weave has changed. And so the weave has changed. Now, the other thing that people seem to want or to strive for is gnosis that is verified by other people experiencing it. Now, to simultaneously experience the same dream, the same vision, the same apparition is incredible. But I want to say that that's not exactly gnosis either, in the sense that that's more like a revelation. That's like divine revelation, which can happen to multiple people at once. And, you know, that is mind-blowing, and that is incredibly, incredibly sacred. It's theophany, you know? It's the God revealing itself, coming forth into this world. And one of the reasons that that happens so rarely is because we are who we are, and because the force of our unbelief and the force of our rationality and the force of our need for proof and verification is so powerful. You know, up until the early modern period and beyond in many places, people lived in a world that was haunted by spirits and demons and angels and gods, fairies. You know, it was not strange to them to meet these things and to see them and to even touch them, to dance with them, to have sex with them, to make deals with them. And for us to do that, as they say, in the body, to be going in your body and to encounter these presences physically is incredibly hard, because everything in our society has conditioned us to think that that is nonsense. And so, you know, we can maybe approximate the state of receptivity of people in these earlier societies through use of methods like dance or sleep deprivation or exhaustion or whirling or sort of a death pose sensory deprivation or drugs, obviously. You know, and all of those things are great, but none of them can mimic being in a whole society that believes in the unseen and believes in the other world. And so when people before received visions and when they received visitations, they didn't say, oh, well, you know, I've got to verify that with someone. You know, who else saw it? You know, can I go and look in a book and see if there's a tradition of seeing this thing? No, they were just like, oh, shit. Well, met this guy dressed in black at the crossroads and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and now here I am with witch marks on my shoulder. And, you know, it wasn't questioned, and there was no need of verification because it was true. May we still think of our experiences and our gnosis, our deep knowing. May we think of that as true, and may we say to ourselves, there was always a first person to see that thing, and that thing has changed over time and has adapted. And when that thing visits me, that is my truth, and that is what I see. I may be informed by a tradition and by texts and by methodology and by the burden of proof, but let me see with my heart too, and let me know the discernment of what is true and what is false, and when it's actually a totally moot point and it's just something that you experienced and that's all there is to it. So put that in your dream pipes and smoke it.